So on this episode of the Magical World of G. Michael Vasey podcast series, I'm delighted to welcome an old friend, Alienora Browning. She is the most wonderful author, has a track record of working in the esoteric and magical fields, and I really urge you to give her books a look. She is one of the best writers I know. Her books are usually absolutely wonderful, full of laughter, full of humour, and with a little bit of grit. So please welcome Alienora Browning.
The first question then, as usual, is I know that you are interested in the occult and the esoteric.
Yeah.
What got you interested in that?
Well, definitely what got me interested in it was various weirdnesses in my life. So, for example, and I won't go into this in too much detail, but when I was a student in Aberystwyth, I swear I saw a corpse candle. And as a writer, and I've been a writer since I was in my early teens, I often feel as if I'm channeling a voice that actually isn't mine. And that's actually quite spooky. I'm not sure to what extent I would be a writer without those voices in the head. So either I'm barking mad, or there's something a bit sort of, mystical going on there.
I know that you're involved in the silent eye and things like that, but give us a stepwise history of what you've done from an esoteric perspective.
Right. So back in the 1990s, my friend Dean and I got involved in the sort of hedge witch, if you like, society of Paddy Slade, who sadly is no longer with us, who lived in a village in Bath or near Bath and was literally the witch at the end of the village. And her rituals were very organic. We'd sort of all wander around the village, and the quarters had particular colours, and there was all that leaping over the bonfire at Samhain, and watch your underwear and all that. And it was great, and it was absolutely wonderful. And through her, and through Dean, and through various other people, I got involved with Servants of the Light, probably in about the early 2000s. And I used to go to Savio House, as I believe you did as well. But I used to go to Savio House particularly for the gatherings.
How did we not meet?
Well, it's weird, isn't it? But I mean, I used to go there for most of the gatherings and loved, and you may have done as well, I loved the way all the lodge banners were sort of up, so you could see all the beauty of those and the rituals and, the very different presence of Dolores when set against Paddy Slade as a hedge witch. And it was through that, through Servants of the Light, that I met people like Steve Tannum, Sue Vincent, bless her, Andy Cooper, Steve Critchley, et al. I just loved it, absolutely loved it. And then I can't remember exactly the sequence of events, but I know Steve then left SOL and set up the Silent Eye in around 2013.
Yeah.
And for the next 7 or 8 years, I went up to that wonderful, I've got it written down here. Oh, yes. The Nightingale Centre, Great Hucklow, Buxton. Lovely place. Did you ever go to any of those?
No.
No. Oh, my goodness me, you missed out. Just magical. And we'd go up there, and it was very different. It wasn't so much the sort of traditional Arthurian stuff, although there was some of that. It was much more touching upon the sort of Egyptian tradition, which I hadn't really got into before. And it was through that that I met people like Diana and Kevin and some of the American, the American mob, and Stuart France, of course. And it was just magical and beautiful and really touching.
Now, Sue was always trying to get me to go to the, she wanted me to go to the first one, which I think you went to, the sort of launch of the school.
Yes.
But I was over here, and my partner didn't take that kind of stuff very well, and it's just too much aggro. And then eventually, when my partner and I split up, I was able to, but by then, Sue and the Silent Eye were doing those weekends. So I went on a couple of those weekends. I went to the Whitby one, and I went to the Northeast England Anglesey,
Yeah,
Holy Island one,
yeah.
and I enjoyed immensely. Met some nice people, and of course I enjoyed Sue and Stuart's company.
Yes, yes.
But unfortunately, all got cut short by COVID. I was going to go on another one, then COVID stopped everything, and then of course Sue discovered she was very seriously ill, and that was it.
Yeah.
Very
That
sad.
was so
Yeah.
sad. It was awful, wasn't it? I mean, it's such a
Yeah.
shock. But those years, and I think I must have been 6 or 7 times. It really was wonderful. It was such a different vibe from the SOL vibe.
Yeah.
And there was all that beautiful countryside around. And there was something very, very special about the bond. I can remember one year in particular, I was given the role of Sekhmet. And that was an incredibly powerful ritual that Steve had set up. Well, Steve and Sue, and I was chained, and I had to get myself out of those chains. And this actually coincided with me actually unchaining myself from my marriage. So all kind of slotted. And again, what you were saying about your partner. They are very powerful, these rituals, I think.
Yeah. And of course, more recently, you've been doing this weird, obscure hexagram thing.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I love it. I mean, as soon as I realised that, I mean, I didn't know you, but as soon as I realised that Sue had a hand in writing it, I thought, I've got to read this. And then things have happened. You know what it's like. You've got these good intentions. And then meeting you sort of through Facebook, I've started the course. In fact, I reckon I'm probably about halfway through, and I absolutely love it. I'm
getting to the good stuff now. I'm like, okay, really? come on, you get to the good stuff now.
But I really love it. I mean, I think what's so good is that it really gets to the heart of this rich symbol and challenges the students intellectually, emotionally, spiritually, and creatively. Which is, it's not just sort of like a textbook for me. With all the meditations, you really are able to touch that symbol very deeply and at all sorts of levels.
Well, these are, I mean, I did that Servants of the Light course, the first 50-week, month course.
Yeah.
And I was in Houston all that time in Texas.
Yeah.
Elizabeth Fox was my supervisor, bless her. She's also gone these days.
Yes.
And she was really good. And it took me off into, but I had this contact, still do, and called Astaroth. And Astaroth took, sort of towards the end of the course and into the next year or two, I did my own thing. And that's when all this hexagram stuff, I remember I went to a weekend somewhere, Dallas maybe, or maybe it was in England. And Dolores was there, and I showed her like this, hexagram diagram with all notations everywhere.
Yeah.
And she said, very interesting. What's it mean?
Oh, that's so Dolores, isn't it?
And I said, well, I was hoping you could explain it to me, actually.
Yeah.
She said, no, you carry on.
Oh, wow.
So that became something obsessive for a while. And I found where it took me, the Garden of Remembrance and the Circle of Healing, extremely powerful things, as well as the symbol itself. Yeah. And then I shared it with Sue, and of course, Sue became very encouraging. You got to put this out as a book. I said, well, there's not enough there. Well, I'll help you then. And sure enough, she did. And I always told her I'd like it to be a course. Unfortunately, she never saw it turn into one. Not that it's popular. I mean, it's like, I think you and one other person are the only people doing it. And I made a bad mistake because I paid a lot of money to set the course up, and no, that was a bad financial mistake.
Oh no! Oh God! Oh dear!
But I mean, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Maybe talking about it on this thing is going to. I mean, obviously that'll get the word out a bit, won't it?
The book itself has sold remarkably well for that kind of a book, and it still does sell remarkably well. So no big deal. Anyway, so tell me more about this voice that speaks through you, and what's the name of the character again?
Well, oh Oh, do you mean booby fellatio?
Yes.
I thought we'd come on to her eventually.
Is she channeling through you?
Let's just completely dive down into the depths. So, I mean, she's obviously an egregious old slapper, not to put too fine a point upon it. Nothing like me, of course. And I was writing one day. This was while I was still, I think, living in Rington, which was the village before this one. Well, it's not. This is a village. And suddenly, this drawling upper class voice came into my head as I was writing, and started by saying, "Well, darlings," and I could see what she was like. I knew that she was, she was a full-figured, a fine figure of several women, and that she had a particular penchant for younger men. And I just thought, Ali, you've got to go with this, and I think she's got this sort of servant called Helga, who is much more sensible, and I think is probably much more like me. But I mean, this woman, she's hilarious, I think. I mean, it makes me laugh, and I write the bloody things, so and I mean, it always goes tits up, excuse my French, but for example, she goes on a ride with Rupert, one of her very thick young men, and they are actually on the job, as it were, when the horse leaps over a field and follows the local hunt, and it all ends up in a cubicle in emergency, accident and emergency. So yeah, she's not for the faint-hearted. And I mean, in all seriousness, I do think that there are some people who call themselves spiritual and are in the sort of world that you and I are in, who find this aspect of me as a writer and probably as a person quite difficult to deal with.
Well, but I can't understand that, because I don't want to get too personal here, but one of the things I had to deal with, and I've mentioned this before on a previous episode, is being raised by parents that were pretty naive, quite frankly, working class. One of them was strongly Methodist, raised strongly Methodist.
Yeah.
And so for me, sex had a stigma, and it's taken me almost my entire lifetime to get over it. Luckily, it's not too late.
Well, you're younger than I am, my dear, so bloody years yet.
But, I remember Elizabeth Fox and I talking about this, because it came through in my meditation journals and caused me some considerable distress.
Yes.
And she was she was quite straight about it. She says, "Look, sex is part of life. It's wonderful, it's magnificent, it's nothing to be ashamed of. Get on with it."
Yes. Yes.
And I think that you're the embodiment, or rather, the character there is the embodiment of that attitude.
Yes. Yes.
And I mean, all of the books that I've read, and I haven't read all of your books, but the first one, for example, the teaching one, the one that you did first of all.
Oh yes. Long-leggedy beasties.
Long-leggedy beasties. Yeah, I mean, it's there anyway in the pages. It's a part of you. It's a part of your I want to say personality, or makeup, character.
Yes.
And I find it, it's incredibly refreshing to read a blog post by you that kind of just blurts it out, and everybody guffaws in laughter, and
or unfriends me immediately.
Well, that's their bloody problem, isn't it?
Not quite. But I mean, it's funny.
To my mind, I wrote a Facebook post tonight. I said, I'm so sick and tired of this world where you have to mind your P's and Q's in case you offend somebody.
Oh, bugger
I'm going to
that.
do exactly what I please. If I offend you, then either get a thicker skin or block me. I don't care.
Yeah,
You're the problem. It's your problem. It's not my problem. It's your problem.
Yeah. But it's funny what you should say about your background, because I was going to touch upon mine. Father, public school, very sort of Church of England. Mother converted to a rabid form of Catholicism when I was 12, which was the whole hair, shirt and whipping bit. So I do not jest either. Me and my sister found the hair shirt in the airing cupboard one day. So part of my sort of writing is a rebellion against that. I think it's me saying, well, fuck that. I'm not interested in this thin, narrow, you will go to hell if you have sex before marriage. It's not what I'm interested in. I don't think it's true. And, you know, I think Booby, in a sense, was born then.
Talk through some of your other books. Tell us what else you've done.
Okay, so I've done obviously Booby Fellatio. The other sex one, which has got censored on the front, and in fact, Sue did the cover for me, is called Come Laughing, which I just thought, you know, if I'm going to be, I mean, I'd left teaching by then, and I was a bit naughty as a teacher as well. I was always getting into trouble. And I just thought, for goodness sake, Alienora, you know, for God's sake, you're in your 50s. Let's just get it out there, you know, come laughing, and it's the come dancing, poetic pornography and funny fantasy. So it's me taking on the world of sex. Talking dirty, sex appeal or clumsy affair, sexual fantasies, the whole lot. And I don't know how many copies have been bought and read, probably only a few, but I would.
Well, but this is a great shame because for me, there are very few writers where you start to read and the page comes alive. I mean, certainly my writing is not like that. I'm a trained scientist and I have a problem with passive writing because I was taught to write experiments up.
Yes. Yeah, sure.
And I find it very difficult to write actively, and I get criticised for it. And I'm like, again, I couldn't care less. I'm doing the best I can, and I'm trying to, you know, and I'm enjoying myself. And
and you're selling loads, far more than I have. Let's be honest.
But that's only because I picked a topic. I'm interested in paranormal and ghost stories, and it's just one of those things that's, they do sell. And
yes.
But your books deserve to be selling far, far more copies than they are. And I know that you struggle greatly with promotion because somehow you feel like it's not the right thing to be doing, or you haven't got the confidence or the appeal or the charisma. Yeah. And nothing could be further from the truth.
Brilliant. Thank you. Well, I think, you know, with that sort of very Catholic side of my upbringing, and of course, the thing of being a teacher for 30 years and having to abide by fucking stupid rules, and if any of my colleagues are listening to this, tough tit, quite frankly, I think there is still a bit of me that's thinking, oh my God, if I say the wrong thing, I'll be put on a stage of the suspension procedure or booted out or something. So I think there is still that Miss Browning teacher that is scared.
Well, but I even have that these days because the world is such a strange place with what you can say and think and do and what's approved and what's not approved and how people react. I mean, I sometimes post something on Facebook and then think, gee, I wonder if I've just, got myself banned for life or something. But then I think to myself, you know what? Who am I? And you know, who's reading me compared to other people? And the people that read me know me already, so you know I'm hardly going to shock them. I think with my libertarian viewpoints and so on.
Yeah, exactly.
So you should think the same.
Well, and also in the realistic sense, I haven't got many friends on Facebook. You know, I'm not one of these people with thousands of friends. A lot of the ones I've got are true friends. You know, they're lovely people that I actually know in real life. But yeah, I mean, there is definitely still the remnants of a Christian upbringing, the remnants of having to be a good girl. Not that I was very often as a teacher. I was on the suspension procedure as a teacher several times. But yeah, and I think this is why I will write something like Come Laughing, and then I'll think, oh my God, you shouldn't have done that.
Now, you have also written a couple of more esoteric books, I hasten to add.
Yes, I have. Yeah, I've got everything here. Yeah, so my Esoteric Journey, Volume 1, and that's a collection of short stories, which starts actually, funnily enough. Does it start? I think it starts with me talking about the fact that I'm a pagan, or however you want to put it. I may have written about my first degree initiation. I can't remember, but you know, it was around that time. And it just became important to me to actually have some of that out into the world. you know, that because there's so much sort of nastiness and incorrect thinking about those of us who are pagans, again, for want of a better word. And we're thought of as being weird and having unnatural practices, you know, and probably group sex and all these things other people are really jealous about. You know, witches sort of getting off with each other at the Beltane fire or whatever. But I just wanted to sort of get across the perspective of a woman then in her 50s who was relatively new to this and just wanted to talk about it. So that was actually quite powerful. And what was really lovely was that I think it was the first of the Silent Eye weekends. I met up with this really nice guy called Matt Baldwin Ives, who happened to be a photographer, and he took a photo of me, you might be able to see, in my purple cloak, and allowed me to use that for the front of the book, which was such a privilege. You know, I'm really grateful to him for that. So, but it's got meditations in it. For a while, I was doing a tarot course with the Arthurian tarot deck. My friend and I were doing meditations and lessons on it. And I was doing that around the same time. And that was very, very powerful. So I've done a lot of that kind of work as well.
And what's the other book?
The other book is called, The Lyre of Logres.
Yeah. And
again, that's a collection of short stories. And quite a lot of them are things like, let me just see if I can find it. There was one about the sun god. There was one about, oh yes, the one which I read on Facebook the other day, which is all about the Llwyd Llinog, which is the grey fox. That's the Welsh name for the grey fox. And he is one of the many psychopomps. And this is one where actually I was spoken through, as it were. One of the characters who comes through me, if you like, is a Welsh woman, an elderly Welsh woman, who I call Granny. And she actually she goes through an adventure in which she sees a man dying, and then the Llwyd Llinog coming along early one morning, and this bit where his teeth snap on the cord and separate the dead man from his body so that he can go off. So it's things like that.
Yeah, cool. And then to round out the books, you've obviously also got diary type books as well.
Yes. I've got 2 literary novels as well, but I won't worry about
yeah, well, we'll come back to them because I was counting Long-Legged Beasties as one of those.
Yes. Right, okay. So more latterly, so within the last, I'd say, let's say 5 to 10 years, for the first time in my life, really, I started going abroad. And I've been to Crete, which I absolutely adored, 5 times, and to Bulgaria so far 4 times. And as you probably know, but maybe other people won't, I've been writing a diary since I was 13, and I'm now 65. So that's 1 or 2 years. So for the first time in my life, I decided I had the courage to actually publish heavily redacted entries. Yes. All the bonking's gone, I'm afraid. Heavily redacted things from my journal. And in doing these, I actually discovered, and I mean, if I tell you I've got the technological ability of a liver, I've discovered how to put photographs into books. So that's really exciting. So these journal books have pictures and colour pictures and as made. And it was really, it was great actually to be able to express that part of myself. Because for a long time, and being more serious now, I was very quiet. Might be hard to believe that now. And my writing was my main speaking voice. For many, many years, I was more of a listener. And so bringing that part of myself, that sort of inner creative side, just felt really, really good. Yeah. And I'm really glad I did it. And in this, the most recent one of them all, which is Return to Villa Eden, which is one of the Bulgaria ones, I actually get into the whole thing of women and sex and how, you know, all sorts of things to do with that in a really kind of intimate way. That's probably not for everybody. how to put potential readers off in one fell swoop.
So, Long-Leggedy Beasties,
Yeah.
which I read quite a while ago now. I just
Yeah.
remember I laughed my hat off.
Oh,
It's
splendid.
just hilarious. You write in a way that, for me anyway, I can visualize. It's like moving pictures, and
Brilliant.
I really enjoyed it. Now, the other one, the other novel, I haven't read, but I do have some recollection of you talking about it on Facebook.
Yeah.
So it was about a writer or something you were envisaging.
Yes. So novel, it's called Riding at the Gates of 60.
Yeah,
And I wrote it when I was 24, 25. And it's about the Bloomsbury group, particularly Virginia Woolf, her
that's
husband
right. Virginia
Leonard Woolf, and
Yeah.
her sister Vanessa Bell. And this comes back to what we were talking about earlier about me kind of channeling, for want of a better word. So there I was, 24, 25. I just started teaching, and this very powerful voice came through, and it was Leonard Woolf, and it was almost like I was taking dictation. And then in the second section, Virginia Woolf, a very different voice. The third section again, and the final one was Virginia Woolf's older sister, Vanessa Bell. So it felt as if I was actually being told, this is what you've got to write. It was, and I don't remember much of the writing process because it was as if I'd been taken over. It was really strange, quite creepy actually.
No, I've had a little bit of that myself, so I understand.
Mm.
Yeah, I think I told a story to somebody on this podcast a while ago that I went to when I was about 20. I must have been 19. I was at college.
Yeah.
Went to a disco in the waterfront in Hull, and so there in the middle of this disco, with all the lights and all the music, somebody came through, and I spent 2 hours explaining to my two friends the meaning of life and everything. As you do.
When you're 19.
And then I came to, and they were like,
creep alert.
and I couldn't remember a damn thing. I mean, it just,
Yes.
yeah. So it's
Yes.
happened to me a few times. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, that's what's so weird about it. And I also, and I mean, you probably do as well, but I also get this quite often in ritual. For a while, I was doing rituals in my back garden here. I actually set up a lodge. And because I was, I'd set it up, I was in the east and I was the magus and all the rest of it. And in some rituals, I actually felt as if I was being, well, I didn't even feel as if I was being taken over. I was a different person. And I'd come to at the end of it, and I'd have no bloody idea what had happened. And I mean, you probably know what I'm talking about there, because you've probably experienced the same or similar.
Yeah, I don't actually, to be honest, I don't actually do that much ritual stuff. I do more meditation. I probably would like to do more, but I don't know. I do a little bit more these days with Slavic stuff. And
brilliant!
If you could see behind me, it's without the background, you'd see my little altar.
Yes. Yeah.
And at the moment, it's got Venus up there because I'm a big Venus fan. And but it's going to have a nice woodcut. I just bought one, my own Christmas present of Marana, the Slavic goddess of winter and death.
Oh.
And I mean, why I would be tuned into the goddess of winter and death is beyond me. But she's mine. She's my deity for some reason that really speaks to me and appeals to me, and becoming even more important. When you talk about paganism, what exactly do you mean by that? Do you have a particular like Fiona, who I spoke to in the last episode, is like a Scandinavian god hierarchy type adherent. Do you have a particular flavor of paganism, or is it just non-Christian stuff?
No, I mean, I would say I'm most closely allied with the Western mystery tradition, and always have been. I mean, when I was at university, I was going to do an MA on Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, and I had a real sense, you know, the whole Arthurian thing has been a fascination since I was very, very young. And the lodge I was in, I've been in several lodges, but the lodge I was in when I was living in Weston, which is Lodge Caerweaven, had the central part of it was the Western mystery tradition and, you know, the Arthurian archetypes. And when I set up my own lodge, again, I had Arthurian archetypes for the quarters, and very much that kind of, and work I've done on tarot, I've done from my Arthurian tarot deck. So that I would say is probably the longest running one. But more latterly, I've become a member of Andy Cooper's Lodge Anubis, which operates here in Glastonbury, and is part of his Helios. And that has been, wow, I mean, that's just blown me away. It's just been absolutely amazing, hugely powerful, very, very different. The energies are very, very different, but I love it, absolutely love it.
Do you see Andy a lot?
Well, not at the moment, because he's now living abroad, as you but when he comes back, we always catch up, and that's always lovely. And we've done lots of rituals, you know, in the assembly rooms in Glastonbury, which is absolutely great. And I love it. I just love ritual. I love doing it. Bloody drama queen.
I definitely enjoy it, but I enjoy it with other people. So the soul weekends are always good, and Andy and I have had a couple of conversations on here too, and you know, we keep saying we'll try to do something, catch up, but hasn't happened so far.
Yeah.
Being outside of the UK all the time is a problem, because it's not that easy to get. I mean, you know, not these days anyways. Seems like a pain in the right royal pain in the arse to get on a plane and fly to London, go through immigration, and, you know, get from central London to. I remember the first time I went to see Sue. I think I was supposed to arrive at like 9 o'clock, and I eventually arrived at 2 o'clock in the morning. I was staying in the local pub, and the landlord very kindly stayed up.
Oh, how sweet!
Yes.
Oh, bless. Oh.
So, yeah. And that was a wonderful weekend with Sue and Stuart, and we revisited sort of their footsteps from the Initiate, the book that they put together.
Yes.
And it was very, very wonderful. And it was the weekend where what was on the agenda was very definitely me.
Wow.
And I had no real knowledge of that until the weekend started, you know, and we even ended up on the last evening. We decided that we'd stop for dinner because we'd gone quite some distance. We were never going to get back in time, and we pulled into this restaurant, and we were talking about all the stuff that happened, and, you know, the things we'd learned and all that kind of stuff. And I opened the menu, and it said something like Gary and chips, Gary sandwich, Gary pizza. I'm like, what?
Creepy. Oh, that's brilliant.
So we all had a good giggle, and then decided, there you are, you see.
Oh.
And out of that came the book Chasing the Shaman, because that was the kickoff for it. It just put me in another gear that weekend.
Wow.
Which was wonderful. Yeah.
Oh, I really miss Sue still. I mean, that was such a shock, wasn't it? It was just.
Well, yeah, me too. I mean, I used to. We had a strange kind of friendship, really. I mean, I'd just pick up the phone from time to time, and then we'd spend like 4 hours just chatting about everything, and you know, I knew a lot about what was going on in her life. She knew a lot about what was going on in mine, and she was the special friend.
Yes.
And when I finally did split up with my partner, I remember I was on the balcony and I called Sue, and I had a bottle of gin. And I woke up the next morning thinking, I don't remember the call finishing or what I said.
Maybe it didn't.
And the bottle's empty. So I called Sue up. I said, you know, she said, yeah, it was a long call, but it was worth it.
Oh, bless her.
She never did tell me what I said. I'm you know, I was probably drunk, and probably not making any sense towards the end of it. But
Well, what the hell? I mean, we've all been there, haven't we? If you can't get totally ripped off your tits from time to time, what is life worth? Is my
So
view.
what's next on the book front?
Right. Well, this is a very good point, actually. I mean, I am thinking that I might go back to either literature or something to do with sex, because I love writing. Egregious old tart that I am. It's just such fun, and the rebellious part of me loves the fact that it actually does shock people. Still, I think that does give me a kick, definitely.
Yeah, so it should.
Yeah, so that's a thought, that I might sort of do, as it were, come laughing again, or, or keep laughing, or something like that. I don't know. But I think, in all seriousness, I think that part of our society needs a kick up its arse. The fact that these outmoded views on bonking are still so prevalent, it really pisses me off. And I would like to make it part of my life's journey to kick that one, as often as I come across it.
There you go. That might be one of your missions in life, and
Yes.
more power to you. Because
Yeah, well, why not? It's
I
like
think I absolutely agree with you. I now sometimes think back. Well, I tell you what, I think back on my life, and I think, what a bloody idiot. What was I thinking?
Yes.
I got married too young. I just thought you were supposed to just get married, have kids, and then live happily ever after. And I woke up at an age about 40 with, like, hang on a minute, I missed my entire life here. I mean,
Yes.
not that my wife, is a very nice lady. We're still friends and stuff, but and it was probably unfair of me to marry her, but I just sort of look back now and think, bloody hell. And I remember when my mother was starting out with dementia, and I went home and took her out in the rental car to Hornsea for fish and chips on the coast and drive up to Filey and this kind of thing. And she suddenly blurted out, she said, the one regret in my life is I only slept with one man. And I'm like, what? Mum.
There's only one answer to that. Yes, so have I. Yes. Oh my goodness! But can you imagine? I mean, this is like a different world to me.
I mean, how could you live in I mean, the constraints, the stress that people place themselves under
Yes.
to comply with some rigid set of rules that have nothing whatsoever to do with happiness or meaning. They've got nothing to do with meaning. There's no meaning in a life, a loveless life. None.
Control. It is control.
Yeah.
Control by religion. That you're going to go to hell if you, if you get your end away before you're actually legally married.
Yeah. I mean, there we have this all-loving father, and as soon as you have a good time, he condemns you to hell for eternity.
Yeah. Well, I can remember when I moved in with my boyfriend, so I must have been about 18, I was at university, and for a long time, because of my mother's views, particularly her views, we pretended that we were just friends, and when they came to stay, we'd be in separate bedrooms. And eventually, and God knows what it was that inspired me, I wrote her a long letter saying, I've been lying to you, Mummy. We are actually boyfriend and girlfriend, and basically I am no longer a virgin. Well, that went down like a cup of cold stick, as you can imagine. Then she wrote me a 20-page letter, which said, amongst other things, I can't love you as much as my other children now.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah, that was a bit of a downer.
This has made me think, because obviously we live in an era now where freedom is definitely under some form of attack.
Yes.
From the corporate government, statists and elitists and globalists.
Yeah.
And it makes me feel very, very fearful for my kids. But then when you look back a couple of 3 generations, you realise that actually, wasn't it the same, but just a different set of controls?
Yes, it was.
And maybe we just got lucky and lived through a period where they lost a bit of control for a while.
Yeah. I mean, you and I are roughly the same age, so it was born at, well, you were at the beginning of the 60s, I was at the end of the 50s, but it was very much that sort of, it was still the godliness, and
Yeah,
all this absolute bollocks about virginity and how important it was
yeah.
supposed to be and all that rubbish.
But when I look back, what puzzles me is it was all of that morality,
Yeah,
but right there on the surface was this very grubby. We had a male teacher at school who my mum and dad had heard about and told me to avoid.
yeah.
If you're a little boy and you fell down and scraped your knee, his idea of comforting you was to slip his hand down the front of your pants
Oh my God.
and fiddle with you. And everybody knew this, all the parents, all the other teachers, everybody. And nobody did anything.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you think, what a strange world
Yes.
where everybody's got this tight morality grip on themselves
Yes.
and living this stressful life of not being allowed to actually be who they are.
Yeah.
And yet they tolerate such behaviour
Yes. Yes.
as if it didn't exist.
Yes. It really, it's just so hypocritical, isn't it? These figures, and you and I know of several very famous ones.
Yeah.
I mean, that sort of story is true. And we all suspected it, and yet there was this conspiracy of silence. We don't mention it. It's like you don't mention the war. We're not going to talk about the war, metaphorically speaking. No, we're not going to mention the kiddie fiddlers. Oh, for goodness sake. Thank God I'm probably autistic is all I can say. Oh dear, though, no, it is hypocritical, though, isn't it? That you had, as you say, the two layers.
You see the same level of people being hypocrites. I can't say it.
Yeah,
You see the same thing now, but in a different perspective. But this whole conversation has now made me think. Interesting. A couple of generations ago, people. I was thinking, like, if I was growing up and found myself 21, 18 in 1918.
Yes.
And I'm thinking, I wouldn't want to go off and fight in the trenches, but I'd have to.
Yes.
They have these horrible, evil, bloody women with their white feathers calling men cowards and things like this,
Yes. Yeah.
And what kind of a world was that,
Yes. Yes. Oh God,
So-
yeah. I mean, that's another thing, because I come from a military family. My grandfather was a brigadier and was at Dunkirk. My father was in the military as well till he was invalided out. So that was very much a part of my upbringing, was the reality of war. And my father, who was involved in the Korean War and the Suez Crisis, was profoundly damaged both mentally and physically by the experience. And I don't know, obviously there are wars now, but I mean, you and I are old enough to have been born not that long after the Second World War. And all of that very much was a part of our growing up, I think, wasn't it?
Well, I remember taking the bus into Hull and there were still parts of streets missing.
Yes, 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 yes,
And I
yes.
think even when I was a kid, there was, when did rationing end?
Oh, hang on. I ought to know this. Was it the late 50s or was it actually into the 60s? I think it might have been into the 60s.
I think it's into the 60s because I
Yeah.
still remember my dad showing me some old ration books in the kitchen when I was a boy. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, when I was born, the Second World War just finished, 15 years previously.
yes,
So,
yes, yeah.
not very long ago. Yeah, sometimes you need to look back and realise that things don't change. Fundamentally, things don't change, just the circumstances different somehow.
Yes. But people don't change. I think that's the thing.
Well, I think the people are the problem, and
of course they are.
I just wish that people would try to fix themselves, and that to me is, this whole magical occult tradition is one of looking inside and trying to remove all of these lenses and heal yourself.
Yeah.
We've just had a conversation for the last 40 minutes about how our parents, God bless them,
Yeah.
didn't necessarily deliberately, but they give us lenses.
Yeah. Yes.
And those
Yeah.
lenses took a lot of getting rid of.
Oh, absolutely. They fuck you up, your mum and dad.
And I keep telling my daughter, don't let me do this. Don't let me do this. Don't just. She obviously doesn't really know what I mean, but she will one day. I keep telling her, don't let me do that. Don't let me. It's your life.
And I have to say to my son, am I being embarrassing? The answer is usually yes. Tell me if I'm being embarrassing, darling, won't you?
I mean, again, I don't really. I say I don't care. Obviously, there are certain circumstances where I do care, professionally and stuff like that. But for people who know me, I try to be as genuine as I can.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to hurt people, but
No.
I've got to be myself. And sometimes people just get annoyed with me or decide they don't want to be friends with me anymore because of the way I am. And that's okay.
And in terms of the writing, is that like is it like medicine for you as well, being able to write?
Yes, I mean, when I was at primary school onwards, when I was one of those very, very quiet, very shy, often bullied, well, with a name like Alienora, what can one expect? Writing became my voice, it became my joy, it became my secret cave, it became my teddy bear that I could cuddle, all of those things. I've got 4 younger siblings, and all 4 of them are much more verbal than I am, although, I mean, I'm being quite verbal now, but if you would see all 5 of us together, it's so I actually was the quiet one. You can imagine what the others are like, can't you? So yeah, but I mean, for me, I've been a writer now since I can remember writing stuff when I was 7, 8. I'm nearly 66, so that's a long time.
And you're an English teacher, and I imagine you're a very good one. I had an English teacher who was a spinster lady, very prim and proper.
Yes.
At my secondary school. I forget her name now, which is doing her an injustice. I'd have to really think hard. And she really encouraged me to read, and I'll never forget her because she introduced me to Ursula Le Guin books, and she had me, she knew. And I subjected her to weeks on end of writing this turgid crap and giving her to review,
Yeah.
But she never once discouraged me. She just kept on encouraging me, and teaching me how to communicate through writing. I'll never forget her. She probably changed my life, and I'm sure you changed the life of several of your students in the same way.
I hope so. I mean, that's part of what being a teacher is about. I think it's not just about imparting knowledge. It's about connecting with human beings and trying to help them to come out of their shells quite often. I think particularly if you're something like an English teacher, which of course I was, with that writing. And yeah, I mean, I taught some wonderful, wonderful young people. I mean, very few I can think of that I didn't actually like. Although quite a few of them didn't like me very much. Asked to be, well, no, that's not true. 1 or 2 asked to be moved into another class. But I think most of them quite liked me.
I think you would have been quite challenging.
Yes.
But in a good way. I mean, that's the whole point of being a teacher, I think.
Yeah, I was very strict. No talking, sit boy, girl.
Were you a marksman with the chalk?
No. I almost never wrote on the bloody board, because if you turn around to write on the board, they could be doing God knows what, creating the next generation in the back row, for all you know.
I had a teacher when I was in infant school that could throw a piece of chalk 30 meters and hit you on the end of the nose.
Oh, nice.
Be writing on the board.
No, I was never any good at ball games. So.
And my father went to the same school 30 years previously and said, is he still good with the chalk?
Oh, Mr. Chips. Oh, how wonderful. That's brilliant. Yay. My 10 books of, and you will have got the idea of this. They are hugely varied. It is a smorgasbord. It is a gallimaufry. It is eroticism, humour, literature, spirituality, novels, short stories, rude bits, polite bits, made up characters, the whole damn lot.
Good. That's the way it should be. So, if people were looking to find out more about you or buy the books, where would they go?
Right. So Facebook, people can find me on Facebook, or Amazon. I've got, I do the old Amazon KDP. All my books are published on Amazon. So if they go on to amazon.uk, what was it, .uk, whatever it is, or .com, and look for Alienora Browning, they
I'll
can
put everything
find
in the notes as well, so
yeah,
they'll be able
yeah.
to. They'll be able to read in the bottom and find everything.
Yeah. So, but they're all quite colourful, and I've also got a YouTube channel which I've recently started, and that's obviously on YouTube, stating the blindly obvious. And that's mainly me sort of maundering on about things, and just sort of chatting and reading.
It's all
So
right.
yeah,
It's good stuff. Yeah.
yeah.
All right. Great stuff.
Oh well, thank you
Thanks a
so
lot.
much. I really enjoyed this. It's been great fun. So.